one of this week's winners. Right here, we have my boy, Russell Graham. Oh, for Russell Graham making an appearance again. And he was at the Bridgerton 40K GT, where he did 5 rounds, going 4-1, putting up a valiant effort even in his loss. So this is one of the people I actually got to talk to a little bit. And shout out to Russell. He's in our Discord. So I actually have some notes from him, and let's look at his list. So Russell Graham did bring the Dread Mob. So with a lot of people always wonder what's going on with Dread Mob and if it's a meme, but it can be ran not a meme way. Let's look at this list and some of its strengths. So we have simply 2 Big Meks with shock attack guns. Each has an enhancement. One is Finder Goggles, and one is the Smoky. A lot of the time, I think you only take Smoky Gubbins simply because you have 15 points left over a lot of the times for this weird detachment. Actually, this list was 1995, so he actually had 20 points left over. He just had to opt in that. Happens to me too. Then you have Ghazghkull Thraka. Yes, he did bring Ghazghkull Thraka, and he does give his thoughts for that. 2 units of 10 boys, followed by 5 units of Grots. Simply 10-man units. No big bricks. That way he can't give up any coal to horde. You do have 3 trucks, 3 trucks, 1 5-man unit of flash skits, a Gorkanaut, 6-man unit of Killicans, all with rocket launchers, a 10-man unit of Lootas. Both of the spanners had rockets. He had 2 units of that to accompany his shock attack guns, followed by 2 Meganobs with twin kill saws, followed by 2 5-man units of Storm Boys. Now, let's break this down real quick. Obviously, the big shock attack guns get the Lootas. Get Finder Goggle is an amazing enhancement, and especially for the point cost. God, I love that it's such a cheap point cost. But Gaz is the real glaring thing here. And something that we've been talking about throughout the weeks is how Orcs really benefit, and so do a lot of different armies, but benefit from actually being able to bring combined arms factor. People understand now that Dread Mob is our shooting, quote-unquote, detachment. Of course, we have melee potential in it between our walkers, but all in all, a lot of the strength benefit our shooting, especially with people having, the ability to increase our CP in the middle expenditure in the middle of the table now way more easily, meaning you kind of want to sit back and pop your CP off, as it's so vital to Orcs. Therefore, what is Gaz doing on this list? Gaz is bringing the meat, he's bringing the pain, and he's bringing the mid-table presence. And that's very much how Russell used him. Russell used him as, I'm threatening with the mid-table. You come into the mid-table, I countercharge you, or I put him out there to start contesting for the points. You eventually kill Gaz. As he said, Gaz always died. But now you're in the mid-table. Not only that, but you're also on an objective. So you're susceptible to shooting, and you're now playing the trade game with him. And usually, guys, he did say this too, Gaz does take, usually, right, there's exceptions, more to kill than he's actually worth, even alongside the Meganobs, or takes so much positioning commitment that eventually he can get the advantage out of it. I've tried this. Other great people, like my boy Mark Perry, shout out in chat, have tried this. I say you give it a run for you as well, but it definitely helps with those this matchups, those high armor save matchups, things like that. And it gives us the combined arms factor between everything else. What I thought also was interesting as a last thought is how he brought the Gorkanaut as well as Gaz. As for, I'm not going to bring just one thing for the meat, but I'm going to bring 2. And as we talk about his matchups and how his games went, you'll see how he actually did use the Gorkanaut, in a very advantageous way. And so did he use the Killicans in an advantageous way, which are also 2 contentious units that people choose to bring competitively sometimes, right? Today's sponsor, Baron of Dice. So Baron of Dice has great dice. They have actually enabled us to give these dice out for our paint competitions. So I greatly advise that you go out there. We have a link in the description for 5% discount. That's, of course, because nobody likes taxes. Shout out to Baron of Dice, because they are actually customizing Orc dice just for us that you guys will be able to get a hold of, and they look exceptional. So shout out to Baron of Dice. Really appreciate you guys, and I really do suggest you get them. I love the actual texture these dice have. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So let's look at Russell Graham's path to victory. So for his first game, and like I said, I actually do have some notes from my boy Russell here. Not a ton, but enough. So he went against Chaos Knights in his first game. He had 2 War Dog Stalkers, 5 Brigands, and 6 Carnivores. Now, right off the bat, we all know as Orc players that in the hands of a very capable pilot or in the right mission, Chaos Knights are simply a strong skew that goes well into us, because the amount of damage you can bring, the amount of toughness you're contesting, and the amount of OC you're contesting. It's one of those things that if you bounce off one of these Knights as an Orc player, there's a good chance that you lose that unit that's now run into slap. That being said, Russell was worried about this matchup, yet he said the player he ended up going into was a younger individual, and it ended up being a pretty smooth game where he did score and perform quite well. Yet I give and 94-point win. Yet, I will encourage anybody who's watching this or a newer player, when you're going to the GT level, you must become aware that there are certain things like Gatekeeper armies and Imperial Knights, Chaos Knights, Custodians very much fall into that line of where they might not end up on the podium, but they'll definitely try their best to stop you, especially if you're not prepared for them. They will stat check and skill test you, and that's why you must know their rules and try to get practice games if you can before GTs, because it's very common that that's when you see him. Now, for his second matchup, which this was his one loss, where he did put up valiant points, he went against the Drukhari. And you've seen earlier, when we did faction versus faction, Drukhari is one of those armies that gives us a hard time. A lot of it because a lot of Dark Lances. Yet, in this case, he had other reasons. So we have a Sky Splint Assault Force. He has 2 Archons, one with Night Shroud, one with Spiteful Raider, a Beastmaster. Now, a lot of people from the casual level or whatever it may be don't really know exactly what a Beastmaster is, so it's important that I show you as your fellow war boss. So here is the Drukhari Beastmaster. As you can see, you're looking at 4 stat lines here for wounds, saves, leadership, etc. Why that is because this is a very unique unit that you might not be familiar with. It is 7 model unit, and there's different variations of these. There's 3 of the Flocks, 2 of the Chimeras, a Clawed Fiend, and a Beastmaster himself. What's really good about this unit and how it's always used, and Russell did confirm it's how it was used in this game, is that the Beastmaster unit can scout 9 inches, and then they move 12. Therefore, simply going first gives them a great move blocking tool. Now, it's only 105 points for that, guys. So cheaper, 25 more points than Zod himself, just simply a Zod, right? So that's cheap for 7 dudes, and they have little invulns, they're T4, and they have weird wounds. And if you're a skilled player and you're a familiar player, you know that if someone's coming into me with a inconsistent amount of damages, if someone's trying to hit me with all damage 2s, for example, I'm going to not take the damage 2s on the Chimeras first. I'm going to waste them in the Flocks to kind of disperse that additional damage. These guys don't get picked up as easily as you would hope as Orc players. And if they're a T3, it'd be easier. But the fact that they're T4 and they get an invuln just means they're very annoying for that turn 1. Their damage output, all that stuff, isn't that too impressive. They can get off and do a couple damage, but for the most part, almost every game, the Drukhari player uses this Beastmaster unit, especially against another melee army or somebody's trying to run them over, to simply get in the way and run and stop them and stop the pressure. And that's something Russell said happened to him in this matchup. So we have Lelix Hethprash and then Urian Rakarth. Not really sure how Urian Rakarth was used. I did pull up her data sheet, as you can see here, benefiting Grotesque and Kronos and such. There aren't really that any on that list. Just the benefit of when it's destroyed, it comes back to life, which is pretty much how it's used on the list. Other than it's feel no pain and getting back up, it's used to just score the secondaries. Other than that, its secondary part of its data sheet didn't even matter. He wasn't trying to heal any of those things because they weren't on the list. So we have 2 units of Cabalites, 1 Witch, 2 Raiders with 4 Venoms, 2 Incubi, 2 Mandrakes, 3 Scourges. So Dark Lance Central, not including the infiltrators of the Mandrakes and the scouting units of the Beastmaster. Board control, pressure, scoring potential is what this list says and bleeds, and it can beat you up for the infantry units you got just enough. So Russell did say in this matchup, it was tipping point. It was really easy for him to get pinned in his deployment zone and stop him from scoring. He killed most of the army and he pulled off his secret mission, yet he simply didn't come back in points. And that's because you lose, the initiative to take secondaries, which is what I always encourage you as an Orc player, is when you are dying for the points and holding someone back, you must calculate now that they can score a secret mission, so you must stop them from scoring secondaries, which is why you kill secondary units and you delay them, which is in this case kind of what happened to Russell. But he did score really well, which means he was trying and probably didn't give up too many units to be killed, so he could still score a late game. That's how I got a secret mission, but was still a loss. Great attempt. And the first mission, by the way, was sweeping engagement, terraform with raised banners, which is good for knights, huh? And then the second game, it was tipping point, take and hold, swift action. Now for his game 3, which is search and destroy, purge the foe, fog of war. You guys know purge of 4 can be hard. Purge the foe can be hard for Orcs, guys, right? But in this case, he went into the Great, which you guys I always tell y'all, you got to do your homework if you're going to play against Grey Knights and known to them. And that's one thing he said. He said, I did get good practice into Grey Knights, so he was nice and familiar, right? So we have Brotherhood Librarian, another Brotherhood Librarian, Kaldor Drago, 1 big brick of Brotherhood Terminators, small 5-man units of Terminators, 3 strike squads, followed by 3 Dread Knight. played against something of this very similar. You know, it might be just because the whole meta is shifting towards having more infantry and 2-up saves and such. This does pose problems for the orcs. What I do like to say is when you see a Gaz and you see a Gorkanaut, you go, man, those Terminators are not going to have the same experience that they normally do, just sitting around the table thinking that they can't die in one activation or one, you know, because the whole idea of the Terminator squad is they have an up Gary, where is he? Somewhere in here. The Narcisium right here. They can regen people. When you have, and you would put Kaldor Drago on there, get a nice early game 6-inch charge. Someone goes to counteract you, pick them up. You know, in case you have the shooting units and you have the units that if you position on other parts, if you do it in the correct order of operations, which I've talked about for Grey Knights when you understand them, you can still pull off charges off on them or just dwindle them really poorly and make your moves around the whole table and they're waiting to pop their strat to react to move away from you and you made all your other positions, right? That's how you have to think about Knights, which is what Russell, he thought he knew how to play in some Grey Knights. This is what's very important when you play them. And that's kind of all we'll say of that, because that's what Russell, you know, I think that's very important. You know, that's what he said in, I'm gonna make sure I read his note correctly. He said it was a good experience playing with them. He was able to screen him out, pick him off, and that was he took his opponent's backfield objective with his Gorkanaut. Very important. You know, Grey Knights don't really like to try and contest the mid-table or really any kind of pressure locations with you on the table if you have the ability, like Kaldor Drake, like we said with Gaz or Gorkanaut, to just stand in front of you because they're pretty soft if you have the right profiles, which in this case, having a Gorkanaut and Gaz are the right profiles to kind of keep them from wanting to consistently engage with you, right? If they can bog you down, then they'll just do that. But if not, they're going to play the cagey game. And if they're playing the cagey game, it means you play the cagey game and you screen them and you march up to their home field objective, which I've done myself. There's sometimes when you look at the enemy, and in this case, like he said, it was purge the foe. So he's not going to play their tack for tack. Oh, I'm not going to let you kill all my little things and play that game. If I'm going to let you drop in my backfield and then shoot this little thing and then run away. No, he needed to play a game of I screen you, I kill what I can, I stop you from killing what you can, and I take your home field objective so you can't score the primary you need to win the game. So he ended up winning that one. Great job by him, because Grey Knights are a headache sometimes, you know, especially if you don't know their rules. So then we go into his fourth matchup. Make sure yep, there's a fourth matchup where he had, making sure, guys, he had World Eater. So he has Angron, Lord Invocatus, World Eaters on Juggernaut, Master of Execution, Berserker Glaives. This dude I used to call him Master of Indirect Combat, because he pretty much is like, I'm gonna fight first, and I'm gonna do devastating wounds, and I'm gonna, you know, like he had a bunch of silly wounds. I'm gonna reroll the hits and the wounds, and I'm gonna precision. Like he had every melee rule where it's like, are you even playing, or are you just kind of getting everything freely given to you? So yeah, I've always just liked that guy. Then we have Jackals, 2 units of Jackals with their sticky objectives, pretty cool. 1 big unit of Corn Berserkers, usually to escort that Master of Executions, because he wants to blood surge into you and get to nice fights and do all those nice things. It needs to be kept safe because he's a soft body. Then you have 1 Rhino, followed by a bunch of 8-bounds. You have 2 3-man units of 8-bound, followed by 1 small 3-man unit of Exalted 8-bound with a nice big 6-man unit of Exalted 8-bound for that super killing potential. Then you have, of course, the World Eater spawn, Chaos spawn. Now, I would like to show, which I'm sure a lot of you have seen, but I like to show you the data sheet directly, World Eater's Chaos spawn. So I like that Jack Hapster, shout out to Jack, called this out, and it's funny because I was like, man, I'm the only one getting abused by this stupid thing. World Eater Chaos Spawn is an excellent, you know, Art of War rated it the best unit in 40k, and I'm never going to contest that because it is atrocious how it can have its Feel No Pain, its melee potential D6 plus 2, strength 6 minus 2, it can regen model lost wounds. So with that being said, and it's T5 with 4 wounds and actually has an armor save and a Feel No Pain. Something that orcs are like, what? You get an armor save and a Feel No Pain? Like, you know, what? You know, like, it's hilarious. Not including they get access to all those strats and the army-wide rule, okay? Which means they can get to a 4 Feel No Pain instead of a 5. That being said, 65 points. This is what orcs would love, to have another skirmishing type unit. The only thing that gets even relatively close, not from durability, but for point value, and not that they can be used in flexibility, or something like a Flashgate unit. If you take Flashgates and you have them shoot and fight to spawn, there's a chance they can actually kill them. They still cost more, but that's why something like Flashgates, and when I say skirmishing unit, that's what you want to think about. Funny how Art of War used the best skirmish unit in all of 40k to call the best unit in 40k, because people know when you can skirmish and win trade-ups in points, you win games, especially as a melee army, which is what we significantly lack as orcs. That's why I really wanted to point that out after I heard my boy, or not really my boy, I don't know him, but why I heard a fellow melee person enthusiast say. So, you know, World Eaters are one of those armies that it can go anywhere. So sorry, I didn't even, after I said the list, what happened with Russell, what he said about this matchup was that he pretty much was murking him with Overwatch. Murking means to kill drastically. With Overwatch, with his Lootas, because obviously he would walk into objectives at some point, and these are a bunch of Marine bodies. Even if Exalted 8-bound are still not much better than a Marine body. And of course, they don't have the issue of 2 up armor saves. Only Angron's like that. He said it took him till turn 4 to kill Angron, which is good because then he only comes back once if possible, which he did on turn 5, but he was the only unit left. And he did say that his Killicans were able to rapid ingress near his enemy's home objective, which is what I always say when I mention Killicans. If you're going to use them, they're a good reserve unit as they're super slow, but they have a huge profile. So it's good to have that pressure, and that's what he did. I'm glad he pulled it off because I love to run up on someone else's home field objective, especially with something that's killy and good OC and kind of durable like Killican. Love to see it. Then he went into, and he won that one with the 96-point win. So he's putting up great scores. And then you see in his last game, 76 points win. So he tied his loss with his last win in points. That's how our boy's doing good. Then he goes into his last matchup. Let me say what he actually said about this. I won't mess it up. Oh, interesting. He said last game versus Ross from Vanguard Tactics. Traded well early on. He had more bodies and more numbers. So turn 3 or 4, he had maxed on primary, and he couldn't catch up. That's why it was a low scoring, though, because primary was a determining, not the necessarily secondaries as much. Now, what I always say is Drukhari hate a lot of bodies and they hate a lot of units unless they have more, right? So we have Artarg Wayleaper, Avatar of Cain, which is getting murked in the Dreadmob, right? Farseer, Skyrunner, and then Fugan, so you can get up and do some shenanigans. 2 waves, 2 wave serpents, Dire Avengers, Fire Dragons, Fire Prism, another Fire Prism, 2 units of Howling Banshees, Shining Spear, minimum size unit, 2 Striking Scorpion units, Swooping Hawks, and then only 1 unit of Warp Spiders. Expensive Warp Spiders, huh? Goodness, they need to be that expensive though. As you can see here, something like Fire Prism combo. You guys are aware of that. Good, very good shooting platforms with these Wave Serpents. They're not getting good enough trades on his points here. And even though these are all cheap, remember, these units are susceptible to our Overwatch with Lootas. He has to be scared of that. He has to be scared of trying to deal with Gaz, just standing there in the middle and tempting the Avatar to come out and either fail to kill Gaz or just get beat up by Gaz or to even just get shot after killing Gaz. And then again, Gaz has now actually made a trade to kill. You know, it becomes this kind of game, like he said, where he has too much OC, he has too many bodies, and he was able to just play the big bully game, which is how you should handle Aeldari. If you're ever going into Aeldari, just know, bully them, run them over. You literally have to run them down. That's how you deal with them as an org player. As funny as it goes along with the lore, that's actually how high-level players and people should, as an org player, deal with Aeldari. Run them down, core them, beat them up. Take the casualties. Even a leftover unit will finish them off, or just have a lot of units. If you lose, it happens. Just have fun murking them and getting stuck in. So shout out to our boy Russell Graham for going 4-1 with his Dreadmob. Which I'll show one more time because it's nice. He had 2 Big Meks with Shokk guns. Both had enhancements. One's Gift Finder, one Smoky Gubbins. Ghazghkull Thraka, followed by a boatload of Battle Line, being 2 minimum size unit of boys, 5 minimum size units of Gretchen, 3 trucks, a 5-man unit of Flash Kits, Gorgonaut, Killicans, 2 units of 10 Lootas with the Spanners having rockets, simply 2 Meganauts with twin kill saws because you need the see re-rolling wounds. It's not Warhorde, right? You don't take 1 of each. You're like, nah, I want that re-roll wounds and that 3 AP boy. And then you have the 2 units of Storm Boys, which I like. So shout out to my boy Russell Graham. Whoa, for the Dreadmob. If you enjoyed the clip, check out the full video here. If you'd like to see more tactics, click here.
Let's get stuck in, lads!